Tom Brady didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. All it took was one cold, calculated line, and suddenly the entire Browns organization was under fire. Because when the greatest quarterback of all time calls out your head coach, it's not just another opinion. It's a message. A warning. And in this case, it was a direct shot at Kevin Stefanski, the man now accused of lying to protect his own image, while holding Shedeur Sanders hostage behind a fake injury. But let's rewind for a second. Cleveland was already a boiling pot. 4 games into the season, sitting at 1-3, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was working. The offense was predictable, the locker room was split, and the fans, they were watching another season collapse before their eyes. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, the Browns' golden draft pick, the face of the future, was standing on the sideline. Helmet on, pads ready, no limp, no brace, no visible sign of injury. Yet every week, Kevin Stefanski stood at the podium and repeated the same line. "We're just being cautious. He's not ready." Except something didn't add up. Because insiders at practice were seeing a different story. Shedeur was throwing full speed, working footwork drills, moving clean. So if he was healthy, why wasn't he playing? And that's when Tom Brady's comment hit like a thunderbolt. On a recent podcast, Brady was asked about how young quarterbacks should be developed, and he didn't hold back. He said, "If you draft a kid that high, you don't protect him from the game. You prepare him for it. You don't hide him behind excuses." Fans immediately connected the dots. Brady didn't say Stefanski's name, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew who he was talking about. If you're enjoying this video and loving the content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps us know what you want to see more of. And why keep all the excitement to yourself? Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves NFL drama. Because in this league, there's nothing worse than a coach afraid to let his quarterback play. And that's exactly what people are accusing Stefanski of. Hiding behind the word injury to cover a deeper agenda. An ego war inside the Browns organization, between the front office that drafted Shedeur and the coach who never wanted him in the first place. It's the kind of story that doesn't just stay in Cleveland. It spreads. It divides. And when a legend like Tom Brady steps into the conversation, suddenly it's not just a locker room issue, it's a national one. Because Brady isn't defending Shedeur Sanders. He's defending the truth of the game. The belief that talent deserves a shot. No politics, no lies, no manipulation. And that's what makes this story so explosive. It's not about a rookie quarterback anymore. It's about what happens when the man running your team values control more than competition. And if Tom Brady's words are any sign, Kevin Stefanski just crossed a line he can't come back from. The breaking point didn't come from one bad game. It came from a series of silent frustrations that had been building for weeks. Inside the Browns facility, whispers had turned into arguments, and confidence had turned into confusion. Kevin Stefanski was supposed to be the steady hand guiding a young roster through transition. But instead, players began questioning if he was even on the same page as his own locker room. Because from the outside, everything looked fine. The team preached trust the process. But behind closed doors, players were watching their season slip away. Cleveland's offense had lost its rhythm. The play calling was stale, predictable, and painfully conservative. And the quarterback carousel, that constant rotation of backups and game-time decisions, had stripped the team of any stability. Week after week, fans were told that Shedeur Sanders wasn't 100%. Yet every practice clip, every sideline camera shot told a different story. That's when frustration started turning into suspicion. Veterans began murmuring that the coaching staff wasn't being honest. One insider even described the atmosphere as tense and quiet, like everyone knew something wasn't being said. Meanwhile, Shedeur himself stayed composed. He didn't lash out on social media. He didn't contradict the team publicly. But people close to him noticed the shift, a colder tone, fewer smiles, more silence. He was ready to play, and the longer he waited, the more the situation started to feel personal. By the time Week 5 rolled around, Cleveland was on the verge of implosion. The fans were restless, the media was circling, and the team's leaders were quietly questioning their coach's decisions. And then came the moment that lit the match. When reporters asked Stefanski, yet again, why Shedeur wasn't suiting up, he brushed it off with a grin and said, "He's close, but we're not rushing it." That was it. That smile, that dismissive tone, became the symbol of everything fans hated about the situation. They didn't see a cautious coach. They saw a man protecting his pride at the expense of his team. And from that point on, Cleveland was no longer just losing games. They were losing trust. And once trust is gone in a locker room, the spark becomes a fire no one can control. Officially, it was a minor ankle issue. That's what Kevin Stefanski told reporters, over and over again. No timetable, no real explanation, just vague talk about precaution and long-term health. At first, fans bought it. After all, protecting a young quarterback made sense. But then came the footage. Practice videos started leaking online, clips of Shedeur Sanders running drills, planting his foot cleanly, launching deep passes across the field. No limp, no wrap, no trainer in sight. And that's when the narrative started to unravel. Reporters began pressing harder, asking why Shedeur was full go in practice, but never active on game day. Stefanski's answers only raised more questions. He'd say things like, "He's getting close," or "We're just being cautious." But when those same reporters checked the team's injury report, Shedeur wasn't even listed as limited. He was marked questionable every single week, as if the label itself was part of the game plan. Behind the scenes, teammates were growing skeptical too. One player, speaking anonymously, said, "We see what he does every day. The guy's healthy. He's ready. We don't know what's going on." That quote made its way to local media, and that's when things turned ugly. Stefanski doubled down. He told the press that Shedeur was dealing with soreness and wasn't where they needed him to be. But sources close to the rookie painted a different story entirely, that Shedeur had been cleared by team doctors, fully fit to play, and was itching to get back on the field. And if that was true, then this wasn't about an ankle. It was about control. Because sitting Shedeur didn't just protect him, it protected Stefanski. Every week Shedeur stayed benched, the coach avoided the possibility of failure. If the rookie played and struggled, critics would question the system. But if he stayed sidelined, Stefanski could point to the injury and keep the spotlight off his offense. It was a clever move, until people caught on. Once fans realized the story didn't line up, Stefanski's credibility started crumbling fast. And when Tom Brady's comment went viral a few days later, it wasn't just an observation. It was confirmation that the so-called injury might have been something much bigger all along. It started as a quiet segment on a podcast, but within hours, it became the headline everywhere. Tom Brady, the 7-time Super Bowl champion, was asked a simple question. What advice would you give young quarterbacks in today's league? He leaned forward, thought for a second, and said something that instantly sent shockwaves through Cleveland. You don't protect a young quarterback by hiding him. You protect him by preparing him. If he's ready, you let him play. Otherwise, you're not protecting him, you're protecting yourself. No names, no specifics. But the internet didn't need them. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of Shedeur practicing, Stefanski's evasive interviews. Fans spliced Brady's quote right over game footage of Shedeur on the sidelines, helmet on, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the field. It went viral. Brady's words hit harder than any report or rumor because they came from him, the ultimate standard of leadership. When Tom Brady questions your integrity, even indirectly, the football world listens. And for Kevin Stefanski, that was the moment the quiet whispers became a roar. Sports talk shows ran the clip on repeat. Analysts debated whether Brady was taking a shot at the Browns. Even former players chimed in, saying it was obvious who the message was for. Behind the scenes, Stefanski was livid. Sources say he addressed the team the next morning, telling players to ignore the noise. But by then, it was too late. The noise had become the story. Shedeur, meanwhile, stayed silent again. No comment, no post, no denial. Just quiet professionalism that spoke louder than anything Stefanski could say. And that silence only made fans side with him more. Because now, this wasn't just about an injury. It was about credibility. It was about whether a coach had lied, not just to the media, but to his own players. And when the greatest quarterback of all time walks into the conversation and drops a truth bomb that fits the situation too perfectly, you can't call it coincidence anymore. You call it exposure. To understand why Shedeur Sanders ended up in the middle of this storm, you have to rewind to draft night, the night that split the Browns' front office in two. On paper, everyone looked united. Smiles at the table, hugs, applause when Shedeur's name was called. But behind those smiles was a battle, one that had been brewing for months. Because here's the truth, Kevin Stefanski didn't want Shedeur Sanders. At least not at first. According to multiple insiders, Stefanski was lobbying for a veteran quarterback, someone with experience who could run the system without shaking things up. He wanted control, predictability, a player who fit his playbook. But the front office had a different vision. They wanted a franchise face, a spark. Someone who could finally make the Browns relevant again, on and off the field. That's where Shedeur came in. A rising star with confidence, composure, and the backing of a massive fan base. He wasn't just a quarterback, he was a brand. And that scared Stefanski. Because coaches like Stefanski don't like uncertainty, they like obedience. And Shedeur, with his swagger and media presence, represented the one thing Stefanski couldn't control: attention.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
So when ownership made the call to draft Shedeur, it wasn't just a football move, it was a power move. The message was clear. The future of the Browns wasn't going to be built around Stefanski's system anymore. It was going to be built around Shedeur Sanders. From that night forward, the relationship was tense. They smiled for cameras, exchanged handshakes, said all the right things, but everyone in the building knew it was fragile. And once the season started, that crack turned into a canyon. Every decision Stefanski made, every conservative play call, every excuse, every precautionary holdout, looked less like strategy and more like self-preservation. He wasn't just coaching a team, he was defending his turf. And that's why, when the so-called injury surfaced, so many people didn't believe it. Because it didn't feel like medical caution. It felt like politics, the quiet, calculated kind that happens behind closed doors. And in Cleveland, those politics were about to explode into full public view. If Shedeur Sanders was the future, then Dylan Gabriel was the insurance policy, the one Kevin Stefanski never admitted he wanted, but quietly leaned on from the moment things got complicated. When Shedeur was held out with his so-called ankle issue, it was Gabriel who suddenly became the centerpiece of the offense. The move looked temporary at first, a simple fill-in while the rookie recovered. But as the weeks went by, it started to feel intentional. Stefanski praised Gabriel at every press conference. He called him reliable, steady, and smart with the football. It was subtle, but fans noticed the difference. When he talked about Shedeur, it was always conditional, when he's ready, when he's healthy. But when he talked about Gabriel, it was now. That shift in tone said everything. Inside the locker room, players started to see the writing on the wall. Gabriel wasn't just a stand-in, he was Stefanski's guy. A quarterback who wouldn't challenge his authority, who'd run the system exactly as designed. And for a coach fighting to keep control, that was the perfect setup. But there was one problem. Dillon Gabriel wasn't Shedeur Sanders. He didn't have the same arm talent, the same presence, or the same leadership pull. And while Stefanski could praise him all he wanted, the players knew the truth. Gabriel played it safe. Too safe. As the offense continued to sputter, frustration spread like wildfire. Receivers whispered about missed reads. Linemen rolled their eyes at conservative play calls. Everyone knew that if Shedeur were under center, things would look different. But Stefanski didn't want different. He wanted control. So every week Gabriel started, the divide grew deeper. Players loyal to Shedeur saw it as disrespect, a power move meant to keep the rookie in check. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to ignore. By week 6, fans were chanting Shedeur's name from the stands. Social media turned Gabriel into a symbol, not of stability, but of stubbornness. Because everyone could see it now. This wasn't a quarterback controversy. It was a cover-up. And Dillon Gabriel had accidentally become the pawn in a much bigger game. The Browns' locker room had always been tight, until this season. Now it felt divided. Not in words, not in headlines, but in energy. You could feel it the moment you walked in. Half the room believed Shedeur Sanders should have been starting weeks ago. The other half kept quiet, out of loyalty, fear, or just exhaustion from the drama. But even silence speaks volumes, and this silence was deafening. Teammates had stopped asking questions about the ankle. They knew better. Everyone had seen Shedeur move in practice, sharp, explosive, confident. He was ready. But no matter how ready he looked, his locker remained untouched on game day. His jersey folded, his helmet untouched. One veteran lineman reportedly told a staffer, "If we're not playing him because of politics, then what are we even doing here?" That quote never reached the press officially, but insiders say it circulated through the building like wildfire. Then there were the receivers, the guys who'd built chemistry with Shedeur all off-season. They weren't just frustrated, they were deflated. One of them even posted a cryptic message online after another brutal loss. "We got the weapons, just need the trigger." It was deleted within an hour, but the damage was done. Stefanski tried to keep control. He called team meetings, spoke about unity, and told everyone to focus on the mission. But you can't unify a team that doesn't believe you anymore. The trust was gone, replaced by quiet resentment and private group chats that never included coaches. Meanwhile, Shedeur stayed professional. He showed up early, studied film, dapped up teammates, and never once called out Stefanski publicly. But people noticed the look in his eyes, focused, cold, almost detached. He wasn't waiting for permission anymore. He was waiting for his moment. And deep down, everyone in that locker room knew it was coming. Because when a coach loses the room, it's only a matter of time before he loses his job. And in Cleveland, that moment felt closer every single day. Tom Brady's name carried weight, not just in rings, but in credibility. When he spoke, it wasn't noise, it was gospel. And his philosophy on football had always been simple: preparation over protection, competition over comfort. To Brady, every rep mattered, every mistake was a lesson. He believed that greatness only came when you faced pressure head-on, not when you were shielded from it. That mindset defined his career. And it stood in complete opposition to Kevin Stefanski's entire approach. Stefanski, for all his intelligence, had built his identity on control. He didn't like chaos, he didn't like unpredictability, and he definitely didn't like players who challenged the system. To him, the game was about structure, precision, and predictability. That worked fine when things were calm. But with Shedeur Sanders, calm was never the goal. Shedeur's style mirrored Brady's philosophy: fearless, aggressive, driven by instinct. He wanted to play through the pressure, not be hidden from it. And that's where everything collided. When Brady's comments went viral, fans didn't just hear football advice. They heard a direct critique of Stefanski's mindset. They saw a legend defending a young quarterback's right to compete, and a coach too stubborn to let it happen. It was the perfect storm. Experience versus ego, legacy versus insecurity. Behind the scenes, sources say Stefanski took Brady's words personally. He reportedly told staff that outsiders don't know what we're managing in here. But even inside the building, that defense fell flat. Because everyone knew the truth, Brady wasn't talking about a system problem. He was talking about courage. And that's what Stefanski lacked. Brady's philosophy was built on trust. Trust your preparation, trust your players, trust the game. Stefanski's philosophy was built on fear. Fear of losing, fear of change, fear of being wrong. In that moment, the difference between the two couldn't have been clearer. One man built dynasties by letting quarterbacks grow through fire. The other built excuses to keep his quarterback on the bench. And in the eyes of fans, analysts and players alike, Brady wasn't just right. He'd exposed the flaw that could end Kevin Stefanski's career. Here's the nightmare scenario for Cleveland, the one no fan wants to imagine, but every insider is quietly whispering about. What happens if Kevin Stefanski doesn't make the change? What happens if Shedeur Sanders stays on that sideline, holding a clipboard while Dylan Gabriel keeps taking hits and the Browns keep losing games? It's not just about the win-loss record anymore. It's about time, the most valuable currency in football. Because every week Shedeur sits, the Browns are wasting something they can never get back: development. Reps, rhythm, and real game experience, the lifeblood of every young quarterback, are slipping away. By midseason, this team could easily be 2-6, maybe worse. The playoffs, gone. The locker room, fractured. And Stefanski, he's officially out of allies. Players will stop buying into speeches about trusting the process when the process keeps failing on Sundays. Veterans like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward will look at the offense, then at their careers ticking away, and start asking the same question everyone else already is. Why are we still doing this? Front offices hate wasted seasons. They hate wasting cap space, prime years of elite players, and above all, public confidence. Because once the fans turn, the pressure hits ownership. And once ownership feels that heat, nobody's job is safe. If Stefanski digs in and refuses to play Shedeur, this isn't just about one season anymore. It's about the message being sent across the entire league. It says Cleveland still doesn't know how to handle quarterbacks. It says ego still matters more than winning. It says lessons from 36 years of quarterback failures still haven't been learned. And if you're Shedeur Sanders, sitting there healthy, watching your team implode week after week, what do you start thinking? You start thinking about the exit plan. You start wondering if this franchise will ever believe in you the way you believe in yourself. So yeah, if nothing changes, Cleveland doesn't just lose games. They lose the locker room, the fan base, and maybe even the future. Because you can rebuild a roster. You can't rebuild trust. Every story like this eventually reaches its breaking point, that moment when frustration becomes action. And for Cleveland, that moment is coming faster than anyone realizes. Because when chaos lingers long enough, the locker room, the media, and even ownership start searching for a reset button. All it takes is one bad loss. One ugly Sunday night game where boos rain down from the stands, cameras pan to Shedeur on the bench, and the broadcast team starts openly questioning why the future of the franchise isn't playing. That's when the narrative flips. That's when the pressure becomes undeniable. The media will smell blood first. Headlines will shift from Brown's patience tested to is Stefanski sabotaging his own season. Analysts will demand change. Former players will call it football malpractice. The public outcry will get too loud to ignore. Behind the scenes, sources will leak. Certain veterans are reportedly frustrated. Some members of ownership want to see Shedeur start. And suddenly, the same man who once had full control, Kevin Stefanski, will find himself isolated. The locker room will quietly start rooting for the rookie, and the veterans will start whispering about accountability. When the turning point comes, it won't be gradual. It'll hit like a lightning strike. One press conference, one viral quote, one moment where the truth can't be buried anymore. Maybe Shedeur himself steps up, calm, confident, and subtly defiant, saying, "Whenever they call my name, I'll be ready." That's the kind of line that sticks. It's a message. And that's when everything flips. Stefanski either swallows his pride and gives Shedeur the reins, or he loses everything trying to protect his ego. Because if Shedeur steps on that field and delivers, even one electric drive, one highlight touchdown, the city will erupt. Fans will see the spark. Teammates will feel it. And the organization will finally realize what they've been missing. The future doesn't wait for permission. And if Cleveland refuses to change, the change will come for them anyway. Because one way or another, through pressure, pride, or pure performance, the Shedeur Sanders era is going to begin. The only question now is whether Kevin Stefanski will still be standing when it does. Every great NFL story has that one moment, the point when everything shifts, when talk turns to action and legends start writing themselves. For Cleveland, that moment is closer than anyone's ready to admit. Because no matter how hard Kevin Stefanski tries to control the narrative, the tide is already turning, and it's turning toward Shedeur Sanders. The league has seen this before, the young quarterback who waits patiently while chaos swirls, the fan base that starts chanting his name, and the coach who thinks he can hold off the storm. But the thing about storms is they don't wait for permission. They just hit. And when it hits in Cleveland, it's going to be loud. The fans are already restless. The analysts are circling. And deep down, even the veterans in that locker room know it. This team looks different with Shedeur in the picture. Not just because of the arm, the accuracy, or the swagger, but because of what he represents. A fresh start. A belief that this franchise can finally escape its cycle of mediocrity. Big Reddy isn't just a nickname anymore, it's a movement. It's the mindset that Shedeur brought from day one, the quiet confidence that says, "I've been waiting for this moment my whole life." And when that moment comes, the cameras will find him. The stadium will feel it. And every doubter who said he wasn't ready will be forced to face the truth. He's been ready all along. The question now isn't if he'll play, it's when. Because once Shedeur steps on that field and delivers that first touchdown drive, there's no going back. Cleveland will have seen the future, and it won't settle for anything less. So as the pressure builds, as the headlines grow louder, and as Stefanski's control starts slipping through his fingers, one thing becomes clear. You can delay destiny, but you can't deny it. And in Cleveland, destiny wears number 2, calm, confident, and dangerous. The era of Big Reddy isn't coming. It's already here.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.